Chapter 12. A Terrible Secret. Told to Rosa by Clara.
"It happened that Sunday evening,"
said Clara.
"It was the evening before Anita went away. I cooked some fish and rice for myself and Raphael. Soon it was ready, but Raphael was out in his boat. He often went out soon after it was dark. That day he was out for more than an hour. Then I heard his boat come onto the beach near our house. As you know, the house stands alone at the end of the village. But still Raphael didn't come to the house, and the food was getting cold and dry. So I took the small oil lamp from my kitchen, and I went down to the sea to find him. The boat was half on the sand and half in the water. Raphael was standing next to it. He was washing the inside of the boat. There was a lot of water in the bottom of it. I came near with the small lamp. The light shone on Raphael and the boat. He was very wet, his head and hair, his clothes. The water was running down him. Then I saw something terrible. There was blood on Raphael's clothes, blood in his hair, blood running down his face. His wet shirt and trousers were covered in it. There was fresh blood on his hands, red in the light of the lamp. "God save us," I said. "What's happened?" "I'm all right, Mother," he answered. "Don't be afraid. But I've killed the stranger who came here to steal my true love." Then I saw that all the water in the bottom of the boat was dark with blood. I put out the lamp immediately. There was no moon, and the night was dark. I looked round at the empty beach. "Take off those clothes," I said quietly. "Wash yourself in the sea until you're clean. Then go to the house and put on clean clothes. Go quickly to the cafe so people can see you. I'll wash your clothes and the boat. Nobody will know what you've done. If the soldier stops coming here, people won't be very surprised. The man was a stranger. He had no family or close friends." Raphael did what I told him. He went to the cafe and stayed there all that evening. While he was there, I washed the boat. Then I washed his shirt and trousers many times, until you couldn't see the blood.
"Oh, Rose, my dear wife," said my uncle quietly. "Have you kept this dark secret in your heart all these years since Clara died?"
"I promised her. She asked me before she died," cried Rosa.
"She was as mad as her son," said my uncle angrily. "We know the soldier ate with Rodrigo in his house that evening. Then he came straight to the cafe. I saw him and talked to him. He left the cafe alive and well about an hour later. I heard him leave the village in his boat. More important, Raphael was with me in the cafe when the soldier left. Yes, he was wearing his best clothes and he was very clean. But when Raphael came into the cafe, the soldier was sitting there alive, I promise you." "Perhaps he followed the soldier in his boat when he left that night. Perhaps he killed him on the sea later," said Rosa. "Clara didn't remember the time exactly." "Impossible," said my uncle. "Raphael stayed in the cafe with me and a lot of other men. He was dancing to the music. He didn't leave the cafe for about 2 hours. And Raphael couldn't catch the soldier's boat. It had an engine. It was a very fast boat.
He killed someone, said Rosa, and he thought it was the soldier. I don't know who he killed, but that's what his good mother told me. I must believe her. Perhaps Raphael thought he killed the soldier. Then later he saw him in the cafe and went mad. It was still a terrible crime. Perhaps that's why he went crazy. But who did he kill? No, it's impossible.
Rosa ran into the house crying. My uncle and I looked at the empty blue sea. We didn't speak for a long time. There was food on the table, but we didn't feel very hungry.
Is it possible? I asked at last.
What? That Raphael killed somebody by mistake? No, it's not possible.
But his mother's story?
Listen, said my uncle. I'm not stupid. When Raphael came into the cafe, he saw the soldier. He didn't look surprised. He didn't even look angry. They both listened to the music for about an hour. Raphael was happy. He was smiling and dancing. All right, I said. I believe you. I believe everybody. But this mystery is going to make me crazy soon. Chapter 13. In the hospital. All that morning, my head went round and round. It was all impossible. I took a notebook and wrote some questions in it. I still have that notebook with me. Sometimes, when I start feeling very proud of myself, I read it. Question 1. Did Raphael kill someone? Is that why he went mad? His mother thought he did. She saw him covered in blood. But who did he kill? Not the soldier. He left the cafe when Raphael was still in it with my uncle. Not Anita. She was with her sister until the music started in the cafe, and Raphael was inside the cafe then. So who? Impossible. Question 2. Was the soldier killed, or did he only go away? If he was killed, who killed him? Not Raphael. He was in the cafe until midnight. Not Anita. She was a child and loved him. Who could kill him? He was a strong young man, a soldier, and he was friendly with everyone in the village. Impossible. Question 3. Did Anita run away with the soldier? Or was she killed too? If she was killed, who killed her? Not Raphael. He loved her, and he was in the cafe all evening. Perhaps the soldier, and he then ran away. But why? He loved her and wanted to marry her. And if the soldier killed her, why did Raphael go mad? Impossible. I read all my notes and questions again and again. Everything seemed impossible. Suddenly, I looked at them again. There was someone in the village who was big enough and strong enough. someone who could kill the soldier. He had a good reason to kill him. There was someone who had a good reason to kill Anita, too. Perhaps he saw her leaving the house with her bag that night. Perhaps he followed her along the dark and empty beach, quietly through the soft sand. Perhaps he saw her meet the soldier. Perhaps he killed both of them and put their dead bodies deep in the sea. There was another man who loved Anita, and that man could kill her for running away. He was big enough and strong enough to kill the soldier. That man was Rodrigo, her father. But then the wrong man was mad. I am a doctor, not a policeman or a detective. I believed I was a clever man, more intelligent than the people of the village. I was too proud of myself. I told my uncle and all the people of the village about my plans to help poor Raphael. I, the great doctor from the university in the city, could make him well again. I was too proud. I spent a week in the village, and I talked to a lot of people. But I still knew nothing about Raphael's madness. I still had no idea what happened to the soldier or Anita. I couldn't be sure that Rodrigo killed them. It was a stupid idea. I didn't really believe it. I promised Rosa and Marta to tell nobody what they told me. It was our secret. I went back to my hospital to do my work. I wasn't so proud. I decided not to think about what happened in the village. It wasn't a good idea to try to change things. I heard nothing from my uncle or anyone in the village for almost a year. I often dreamt of Raphael and his gold ring when I was very tired. But I never went back to the village. I didn't want to meet those good people. I was sure they didn't have a good opinion of me now. Then one day, a fisherman brought a note to the hospital. It was written by Rodrigo, the shopkeeper. It said, "Raphael is very ill. We think he's dying. Please come immediately. Only you can help us. Please come. Remember my dear daughter Anita, and poor mad Raphael, and help us. Your uncle asked me to write this letter, but I want you to come too. Perhaps at last we can find out what really happened to my daughter all those many years ago. Rodrigo Garcia." I took a small ambulance from the hospital and went to the village. I was there in a few hours. I went straight to my uncle's house. Raphael was there, lying on a bed. Rosa was putting cold, wet cloths on his head. Raphael was very thin and yellow. When I came into the room, he coughed weakly. Blood ran from his mouth. Rosa washed away the blood with another cloth. It was already red with Raphael's blood. "It's tuberculosis," I said immediately. "He's very ill." "Yes, I know," said my uncle. "That's why I asked you to come. It's very bad. I don't think there's any hope for him." "I'll take him to the hospital," I said. "I've got an ambulance with me. With medicines and nursing, perhaps we can still save him. But there's not much hope for him. He's very weak." We put Raphael in the ambulance, and I took him back to the hospital in the city. He was almost dead. We washed him and cut his hair and beard. We put him in a clean bed and gave him medicines. I sat by his bed for 8 hours. He didn't move. He lay like a dead man. His body temperature was very high. Then, very slowly, it began to fall, and he fell into a quiet sleep. 2 days later, he opened his eyes. He was still having medicines, and he was very weak. He lay without moving. Only his eyes moved. He looked round the strange white walls at the plastic bottle above his head. He looked at me in my white coat at his side. "Am I dead?" he asked very quietly. "No, Raphael," I said. "You're in hospital. I'm a doctor. Miguel, the owner of the cafe in your village, is my uncle. Don't be afraid. We're trying to make you well again." His mouth moved in a tired smile, and he fell asleep again. I brought a nurse to sit by his bed. "Tell me if he wakes up, or if he gets worse," I said. Then I went to my room in the hospital and fell on the bed. I was asleep in a few seconds. There was little hope for poor Raphael. He was thin and weak after all the years that he lived on the beach. For years he ate very little. He slept on the cold, hard ground. The tuberculosis was very bad. He was very, very ill. But he wasn't mad. He could speak very little. Most of the time he was very tired. But when he spoke to me, his words were clear and calm. He lived for 6 days in the hospital. He slept, he woke, and when he was awake, he talked to me. Coughing blood, he told me everything. Then, on the 6th day, he fell quietly asleep, and after a few hours his heart stopped and he was dead. After his long years of pain and madness, I was happy that his death was quiet and easy at the end. He did a terrible thing, a terrible crime, but he paid for it with long years of madness. I have written his story down here. One day perhaps people will read it, but not until all the people in it are dead. Until that day, it must stay a secret. Chapter 14. The Murder. This is what Raphael told me. Raphael always loved Anita. He couldn't remember a time when he didn't. It was a small village, and the children always played on the beach. Anita and the other girls watched the fishermen. The men cleaned their boats and mended their nets. Raphael fell in love with Anita when they were still children. He loved her, and she loved him, or she always said so. But her father wanted her to marry a rich man. A fat old man, perhaps, old and ugly, but he must be rich and important. Raphael could do nothing to change Rodrigo's plans. There was a place in the rocks at the end of the beach to the west. The children often played in it. It was like a little house in the rocks. In the evenings, Raphael sometimes met Anita there. She came out of her house very quietly and ran to their secret place in the rocks. There she and Raphael talked for a few golden minutes. Then she ran home again, afraid of her father. Anita was only 15 years old at that time, but her head was full of the stories in her books. She was sure she was in love with the handsome young fisherman. Raphael brought her the gold ring. It was like the magic ring in her story. Her father didn't accept it from Raphael, but Raphael gave it to Anita in secret when they met later in their secret place in the rocks. The ring was the promise of their love. She wore it when she was with him. At other times she kept it in her room, in the secret place under the carpet. But then the soldier came to the village. He was an older man. With his bright eyes, his long hair, his boat with an engine, he was much more exciting than Raphael. When he talked with Rodrigo about his life and his travels, Anita heard his stories through the wall of her room. These stories were more exciting than magic lamps and talking fish. Anita soon thought Raphael was very boring. She stopped meeting him. She stopped speaking to him. Now she was sure she was falling in love with the soldier. But she still kept Raphael's ring, of course. Raphael was very sad. He wanted the soldier to leave the village and go away forever. He wanted Anita to come back to him. But then, one night, Raphael was coming back late from a fishing trip. He saw Anita running along the beach in the moonlight. He watched quietly from the sea. He saw Anita meet the soldier in the little house in the rocks. How did the soldier speak to her? How did Anita give him the time and place to meet? Raphael didn't know. Perhaps the soldier gave her a secret note. Perhaps Anita gave him one. They could both read and write. Raphael left his boat and swam to the shore. He moved very quietly through the rocks. The soldier's boat was in a small piece of open water on the other side of the rocks. It was only about 10 minutes from the village along the coast. Raphael watched and waited until he saw Anita run back to the village. Then he watched the soldier swim back to his boat. After a few minutes, the soldier started his engine and went away to the west. Raphael was very angry. But he was angry with the soldier, not Anita. He hated this man who was a stranger in the village, a man who the people all accepted as a friend, but a man who was now stealing Anita, his own true love, from them. Next time the soldier came to the village, Raphael watched him. When the soldier went away in the evening, Raphael went quietly along the beach to the place in the rocks. Soon the soldier's boat came back into the place in the rocks, and he lowered his anchor. The soldier swam for a few minutes in the moonlight. Then he sat in the boat again and smoked a cigarette. He sat for a long time, looking sometimes at his watch. At last he swam to the beach and went to the secret place in the rocks. He waited there.
Soon Anita came, hurrying over the rocks. She and the soldier kissed, long, loving kisses. They sat in the little house in the rocks. The soldier held her close. They talked and laughed and kissed again. And all the time Raphael watched and listened to them with black hate in his heart. After that, Raphael followed the soldier every time he came to the village. The soldier did the same every time. Sometimes Anita didn't come to the place in the rocks, but the soldier always waited for her there. Then Raphael knew how to kill the soldier. It was a good plan. The next time the soldier came to the village, Raphael's plan was ready. The soldier arrived in the village that Sunday and went to Rodrigo's shop with the tin of paraffin. Raphael waited until it was dark. He saw the bright light of the lamp in Rodrigo's house. He watched the soldier start to eat the meal with Rodrigo. He had everything that he needed in his boat. He sailed out quietly to the place in the rocks, the place where the soldier always waited. He took his boat close to the shore and tied it to a rock. Then he went on foot to old Santiago's farm. The old donkey was standing sleeping in its field. Raphael walked with it down to the beach near his boat. It wasn't very far. There he took the old donkey into the water and then killed it. He put the dead animal into his boat and went out into deeper water. He went to the place where the soldier usually left his boat. There he began to cut up the dead donkey, throwing the pieces into the sea. He and the boat were soon covered in the donkey's blood, but there was much more blood in the water all round the boat. Raphael knew that the sharks, far away in the sea, could smell it. Raphael kept the back legs of the donkey in his boat. He took a long, strong piece of line and tied the legs to it. Then he sailed quietly back to the village. There was no moon that night, only the light from the stars. Soon he could see the beach and the houses of the village. The lamp was still burning in Rodrigo's house. The soldier's boat was a few meters from the shore. It was always in the same place. The soldier didn't want to break his engine. Raphael moved his boat close to the soldier's boat and stopped. He went into the dark water and swam across to it. He had the end of the line in his teeth. He tied it to the bottom of the soldier's boat. Then he swam back to his boat and put the legs of the donkey quietly into the water. Now the soldier's boat had the smell of blood behind it. Raphael took his boat to the far end of the beach in front of his house. He pulled it half onto the sand and began to wash the donkey's blood from the bottom of the boat. He washed some of the blood from his clothes in the sea, but there was a lot of blood and water in the boat. Suddenly his mother came with an oil lamp. She saw the blood on his clothes and in the boat. She was afraid he was hurt. "Don't be afraid, Mother," he said. "I'm not hurt. This isn't my blood. I've killed the soldier." It was true. The soldier wasn't yet dead, but Raphael's plans were made. Raphael wasn't afraid to tell his mother. She always kept his secrets. She was very calm when he told her. She sent him to the house to change his clothes. She stayed and cleaned the boat. When he went to the cafe, he found the soldier there. He was surprised. He thought the soldier was spending the evening with Rodrigo. Raphael looked at the soldier, his enemy. He was smiling and laughing with his friends. Raphael thought, "The sharks are already waiting for you. Tonight you're going to your death." The soldier left in the middle of the evening. He went out to his boat, started the engine, and went off to the west. Raphael stayed in the cafe listening to the music. He was afraid, but he was excited too. When he heard the music, he began to dance to the songs. Eyes closed, he saw in his head the soldier's boat. It went through the dark night. Behind it, the red line of blood dark in the water. The engine stopped. The boat came quietly back to the secret place in the rocks. The soldier waited in the moonlight, smoking a cigarette. Perhaps then he jumped into the dark sea for a swim. Something was waiting there, something big and hungry. It moved fast through the water. Perhaps there was time for one short scream. Then all was quiet again. The dark waters were calm, and the soldier was gone forever. Raphael danced and smiled, and saw these pictures again and again. He stayed and danced until midnight. Then he went back to his house and went to bed. But he slept only for a few hours. Before the first light of day, he got up quietly and went out of the house. He took his boat along the coast to find the soldier's boat. The boat was there, in the place in the rocks. It lay empty and quiet in the water. Raphael looked for the soldier in the sea and on the land, but there was no sign of him. Nothing was left of him. Raphael saw the long shadows of sharks still swimming in the water near the boat. The boat's engine was above the water. There was a long piece of fishing line tied many times round it. Raphael took the soldier's boat far from the shore. There he made a hole in the bottom and pushed it under the water. Soon it went down to the bottom of the sea. Raphael was happy. The soldier and his boat were at the bottom of the sea. Nobody knew what happened to him. He went back to the village and into the house to have an early breakfast. Suddenly he was very hungry. He went back to the village and into the house to have an early breakfast. Suddenly he was very hungry. Chapter 15. The Truth at Last. A little later, Raphael told me, he and his mother heard the shouting and screaming from Rodrigo's house. They soon learned that Anita was nowhere in the house or the village. Raphael smiled to himself. Perhaps Anita was still waiting somewhere for her soldier. She can wait forever. She'll never see him again, he thought. I'll sail along the coast and look for her, he told his mother. In fact, he wanted to go to a quiet place to wash his boat again. There was still some dark blood in the bottom.
He went back to the place in the rocks. It was calm and quiet there. The soldier's boat was at the bottom of the sea. Raphael took some water from the sea to wash his boat. A small shark swam slowly under it. Almost without thinking, Raphael picked up his fishing spear. He hit the shark hard through the back of the head. Its blood came out into the clear water. A few other sharks, bigger ones, smelt the blood and came fast through the water. They began to bite at the dying fish with their great sharp teeth. They fought, biting great pieces off the dead shark. Raphael decided to catch one or two and cut them up in his boat. He wanted their blood to be in the boat with the donkeys. A white shark, about 3 meters long, was pulling at the dead one. It lay in the water next to the boat, not moving. Raphael killed it with his spear and put a line round its head. Then he pulled it into the bottom of the boat. Raphael took his knife and cut the shark open from neck to tail. Pieces of meat, fish and hair from its stomach fell out into the bottom of the boat. There was a large piece of donkey skin with its grey hair. Raphael moved it with his knife. In that second, the world stopped. Raphael's blood seemed to freeze inside him. The sky went dark. He couldn't move. In the pile of meat and fish in the bottom of the boat, there was a hand. A complete hand, white and clean. It was cut off at the wrist with one clean bite. It was a small hand, with small pretty fingers. The fingernails were long and pink. They weren't bitten or dirty or broken by housework. And on the middle finger of the hand was a gold ring, a ring in the shape of a golden fish. Raphael gave one great scream. He held his head in his hands. He knew now where Anita was. The night before, when the engine of the soldier's boat stopped working, she was there in the boat with him. Then he went into the water to look at the engine. She stayed in the boat. She saw him when the sharks killed him in the dark water. Perhaps she tried to pull him into the boat. But then she too fell into the blood-red water, and there she spent the last terrible seconds of her life with her true prince, the soldier. Raphael knew he couldn't continue living. He couldn't live with this terrible secret. He stood up in the boat and called Anita's name. Then he threw himself into the sea. He lay in the water face down. He waited for the sharp teeth in the mouths of the sharks to pull him down to his death. But they didn't. He felt them in the water all round him. Sometimes he felt them push against him, but they didn't hurt him. Then Raphael understood. God didn't want him to die this way. An easy death, a quick death, too quick and easy for a murderer. He was terribly afraid. He tried to kill himself. He held his face under the water and tried to die, but he couldn't. At last he climbed back into the boat. He sat like a dead man and looked at the little hand with the gold ring.
After a long time, he took the ring carefully from her finger. He took a piece of fishing line and tied the ring round his neck. He had his ring again. He had it from Anita's own hand. "I'll keep it with me forever," he thought. "Then I will never forget my terrible crime." He threw the dead shark back into the sea. Then, last of all, he took the cold white hand. He held it in his own hand for the last time. Then he put it carefully into the water. Then he lay down in the bottom of the boat, holding the ring at his neck. And he looked at the bright sky and talked to Anita. And they laughed and laughed. I took Raphael's body back to his village. He lies in the ground near that place in the rocks, the secret place where he and Anita spent many happy hours. I put the gold ring round his neck, the ring that he took from Anita's dead hand. It will stay with him forever. Nobody in the village knows what he did. Not Rodrigo, not my uncle or Rosa. They still believe that Anita and the soldier are living somewhere far away. I can see no reason to tell them anything different.